So thank you for having me. My name is Saurabh Gupta. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Cloud Compliance. We are a Salesforce App Exchange partner. And today we're going to talk about data privacy in Salesforce. I have a fair amount of content. This is a pretty large topic. So I will try to cover a lot of ground. I want to make sure that you all get value out of this session. So apologize if I speak too fast. I'm going to go through a lot of stuff. Put your questions in the chat, and absolutely, once we are done, we can look at them. Let's start with our version of Safe Harbor. This is not legal advice. We don't represent Salesforce. This is just our point of view. We are a technology company, not a law firm. I would begin by just saying thank you to all of our customers. I'd also like to thank all of you for making the time today. I think data privacy is an issue that affects all of us. It is quintessential and it is a fundamental human right. So I'm very glad to operate in this space and with your interest in this space. A little bit about me. I used to work for Salesforce for about 7.5 years. I was the Senior Director for Global Enterprise Architecture there. So I had the opportunity to spend the time and look at a ton of Salesforce implementations, different customers, different segments, industries, regions of the world, things like that. From a background, I am an enterprise architect. I've spent a lot of time in that space, even prior to Salesforce with other technologies, Microsoft, Oracle, things like that. Academically, I have a master's in design and an undergrad in pharmacy, so not really a core engineering type conventional person. Spend a lot of time solving problems, and that's an area of interest. I do like to write and blog, so I'm very active on LinkedIn. Please do connect with me on LinkedIn if you like. I'm based in Chicago, where the snow has just melted, so it's a good day here. We are all about compliance on Salesforce. We are a 100% native Salesforce app. And these are the 6 broad category of areas that we cover for Salesforce customers. I will talk a little bit more about how they pertain to regulations like GDPR and data security privacy. But in general, these are the areas that we will talk about, just to give you a sense. We have spent a lot of time making sure that we've last 3 years, I've looked at this problem and made sure that from an enterprise architecture point of view, we cover all bases for things that our customers would or should need. And also, how do we solve it in a very scalable manner? So here's a brief agenda. We'll go through what these data privacy laws are. Why should you even bother with them? What are the technology capabilities or requirements that your organization may want to think about for complying with data privacy laws like GDPR, CCPA, Brazil's LGPD, and so on and so forth? What does platform offer out of the box? What are your other options? What are some of the considerations? We have a data masking product, and there is a trial of it. If you're interested, I'd be happy to connect you with our product manager, Jens, who's actually based in Amsterdam. And then I'd point you to some resources that may be useful if you're looking at this space and want to learn more about it. With that, let's talk about why should you bother about personal data protection and privacy laws. Fundamentally, the idea here is that this is regulatory and compliance authorities all over the world catching up with technology, right? Technology gave us massive capabilities. We industrialize information gathering, information processing, all kind of marketing, tracking you online, pinpointing and targeting messages at you in social media, whether it's LinkedIn, Facebook, everywhere and anywhere. It has also exploded outside of just a web browser. It's not just your computer and your phones. It's on your smartwatches. It's on your new modern cars. Everything has a digital exhaust, and personal data protection and privacy laws are all about it. At the core of it, the idea is that businesses are obligated to treat our information fairly, transparently, and lawfully. And these are terms that have specific meaning, particularly for GDPR. The intention is that our information is not just available for free and you can just land grab it, right? There needs to be more around consent, around taking our permission, around informing us what is going to happen with our information and why are you asking for it. And this applies to every human, right? Whether you are a customer or a consumer of an organization, whether you are a volunteer or a donor for a nonprofit, whether you're an employee, partner, in any other form, if you have a relationship with a product, a brand, an NGO, a higher ed, an organization, a government authority, in all of those scenarios, there is obligation for those organizations that are processing your data to treat it in a certain manner. And what that really means is that we have been accorded rights under these regulations. If you're an EU resident, you have certain rights under GDPR. If you're a California resident, you have rights under CCPA. If you're a Brazilian, LGPD. Indians, PDPB coming shortly, and so on and so forth. The thing that is incredibly interesting and different about these regulations is that they have a cross-border enforcement. In the past, if I was a business in Mexico or China or India or in Europe, and I was selling to people in America, you can't really apply that law in these other countries because, hey, there is no cross-border enforcement, or it is very limited. These regulations have cross-border enforcement. EU authorities can go after a company that has no physical presence whatsoever in EU if that organization is actively processing EU residents' data. The reason this is important for you in the Salesforce world is if you work for an organization that has a global presence, if you operate outside of EU, guess what? GDPR is not the only regulation your organization needs to comply with. They may have to comply with LGPD if they are in Brazil, CCPA if they're in California, and so on and so forth. The other thing about these regulations is that we are accorded specific rights. We have a right to data portability, which means we can ask for our information from any business. So if you have an Apple phone, you can go to apple.com, ask for your data. You can ask from Facebook. You can ask from literally any business in Europe that processes your information, and they're obligated to comply and provide you in a portable format. You can also ask these businesses to remove your information, commonly known as right to be forgotten. So you can make a request and they're obligated to comply within a certain amount of time. The third portion of this, for some reason, it looks like my keynote froze. Okay. There is a monetary penalty for these non-compliance, right? So if under GDPR, if one of the regulatory authorities, for example, ICO in UK or, CNIL in France or these other regulatory authorities, they can enforce and, fine these organizations. And those fines could be significant monetary penalties. In addition to all of this, there is another thing that is driving it, which is really because of COVID, right? It is the idea of trust. Never has been trust as important as it has become today. Because today, I don't walk into a store. So much of our idea of trust is informed by physical presence, right? You walk into a massive store, you're like, this is such a big store. They can possibly not do things wrong, right? But today, you don't walk into a store, you go to a website. So the only reason I can trust some website somewhere else in the world to ship me the product or service that I'm paying for is because I have some semblance of trust. If you're a marketer, trust is now more than ever the most important aspect for your marketing to give returns. To put this a little bit more in perspective, this is sort of the impact that customer trust and reputation can have, right? Fines have averaged, and 81 is really like a small number, frankly. And my apologies, it's not in euros, so it's even lesser, probably 60,000 euros. But there are some incredible fines that the EU has levied, particularly on large businesses such as Google, Facebook, some of the breaches that happened with British Airways, H&M, a lot of those. In addition to that, there is a direct impact on stock prices. So if you work for an organization that's a listed company on stock exchange, there is another incentive there for this to happen, in addition to the moral and ethical ones that already exist. In terms of the privacy laws, this whole landscape is evolving. The reason all of this is so important for Salesforce professionals is because if there is one application in your enterprise that has personal data, it is the CRM, right? You may not have it in other kind of apps, but the CRM absolutely has that. And this is the trend, right? There are a number of regulations already in place, and there is a number of other ones that are actively either in the process of getting enforced or going through approval. I read a stat somewhere that in the next 4 or 5 years, today only 20% of the human population is covered under privacy laws. In the next 4 or 5 years, that number would rise to about 65, 70%, primarily because both India and China are aggressively working on their privacy laws. That's 2.5 billion people that will be covered. So there is an incredible amount of emphasis of these things that should boil down if you work in the CRM space. If you're a Salesforce professional, whether you're a developer, an admin, an architect, a business analyst, a marketer, it doesn't matter. When you're looking at this, think about this more cohesively, because what you're doing today, if that doesn't take into consideration areas like privacy by design and data security, sooner or later, your projects, your capabilities may get affected. They may get stunted, and you may have to go back and re-engineer things. Here is what we have heard from Salesforce customers, and I've been very fortunate. By virtue of this organization, I get to talk to a lot of customers in Europe, a lot of customers in the US and Brazil and elsewhere. And here is what we have heard. There are these 3 areas. Nobody I've spoken to wants to be in this unusual situation, right? They don't want a breach. They don't want to be fined. They don't want to deal with the embarrassment to their brand. Everyone I've spoken with wants to address the right set of concerns. The challenge for most people is it's really hard to understand what those right set of concerns are from a Salesforce perspective. And it's hard to understand, how do I solve them holistically? How do I solve them in a very future-ready manner? So this is kind of what has helped us in the last 3-4 years. Our thought of what needs to happen has been informed by customers, and we work with a number of data privacy professionals to understand more of how we should interpret this. What does that mean? So these are the 6 areas that we primarily hear, and that's kind of led us to this evolution of 6 products in our portfolio today. And these I've put them in terms of some of the most common requests that we hear, and some of the oldest ones that we hear. So the number one thing we hear from a lot of customers is automation of privacy rights, the ability to generate data portability and address those requests. So if you have a lead or a contact and they ask for their information, how would you pull it from Salesforce? Or if they want their information to be removed, how do you do that? The second thing we hear about is data retention or minimization, which is again a GDPR requirement. And the idea is, how do you anonymize or delete old data in Salesforce? The third is the consent and communication preference management, which is all about opt-in, opt-out integration with marketing technology stacks. So if you have Marketing Cloud, Pardot, Adobe's Marketo, Eloqua, MailChimp, or any of those other ones. And we actually became the Adobe Exchange partner for that reason, because Marketo is an Adobe product. And the intention here is everything from a lead, a sign-up form to however else you're getting inquiries. How do you manage their consents and do this effectively? The fourth area to think about from a Salesforce perspective is, today, if you have sandboxes, the data in it is real production data, right? And if you look at the constant sort of breach impact that has happened, SolarWinds breach happened, I think last year, October sometime. Just last week, we had a breach because of a hosted version of Exchange. So if your company was running an Exchange server on premise, 30,000 such customers in the United States got breached. And from what I've heard, that may be the sort of the lower number that's being reported. The point is, literally no technology, whether it's on cloud or on-prem and whoever makes it, no technology today is safe because of malware, ransomware, all kind of threats that exist. And one of the most effective ways to address those threats is to just not have this kind of data everywhere. If you are a large organization with a couple of full copy sandbox, a bunch of partial copy sandbox, you have 6, 7, 8, 10, 20 copies of your real actual customer data floating around. And so sandbox data masking is a technique to solve it. That's one area that we work in. Finally, one of the other areas that comes up quite commonly is the inventory of personal data. for doing all of these things, you really need to know where they are stored, who do you share it with, who do you source it from, how do you manage it, how long do you keep it for, who owns it. So there's a lot of these kind of questions. This is actually also referred to in GDPR as ROPA, Record of Processing Activity. But it's far more intense in CCPA than it is in GDPR. Nonetheless, it's another area to think of. And I will get into what does Salesforce platform offer in some of these areas, what do we offer, what do some other things, other vendors offer. And finally, the idea that you bring transparency so that when this information, when you're collecting information, when you're onboarding customers, leads, and things like that, you bring transparency to that. And the way to do that is by privacy policies, terms and conditions, and things like that. So we offer, policy and notice management. And the idea there is you have a bunch of records in Salesforce that basically create your privacy policy. You can have it in different languages for different kind of regulations. If I have a customer who operates globally, they have 17 variants of privacy policy in 17 different languages. When they onboard their customers, they want a proof of acceptance that connects back to a specific version of a policy. So there are things like that we do all natively from Salesforce. So if you go to our website, cloudcompliance.app, and if you go to our privacy policy, that's all running from Salesforce. You can see it in multiple languages and things like that. All right. So let's talk for a minute. This is great. You got a sense of this, someone in your legal or marketing or regulatory or finance came and said, hey, we don't want to be sued. We want to do these things. What do you recommend? And please don't tell me Salesforce is the answer to everything in the world, right? So from an enterprise architecture perspective, how do you really solve these problems well? So there are two ways of solving it, at least two broad ways of solving it. You have a bunch of applications in your ecosystem. Of course, you have Salesforce, a bunch of other things, and you can go out and buy a standalone application. There is OneTrust, TrustArc, Nimity, Security.ai. There's like a lot of these apps. You can buy a standalone app, and a lot of businesses do. And then you can integrate them with all of these systems, right? That's an approach, legit approach. Lots of businesses do, particularly a lot of larger ones. And it's great, it works. The challenge, of course, is you're going to spend a lot of time and money building integrations and doing a lot of other things. There is another approach. You can use Salesforce with products like the ones we make. And essentially, you can leverage all the stuff that you already have because you already have sandboxes, you have employees, you have change management, you have existing integrations, and you may add more to it. So those are the two approaches to think about when you think broadly from an enterprise architecture perspective. And here is the comparison that I was just mentioning, right? With a new application, there is an adoption and learning curve with Salesforce. You know this, you understand this. With a new application, you are going to do a net new investment in pretty much everything. Comes with 4 sandboxes, you're going to pay for 4 sandboxes, and you'll pay for integration, training, CI/CD, so on and so forth, right? And in our case, we are thinking, hey, you already have Salesforce. You've already paid a lot of money and you're leveraging that. If you want to do something like consent and communication management, this is another area where if you're going to not do it in Salesforce, you now have a customer master project in your hands. You're going to pull all this information, store it in some standalone app, drive it from there. And with Salesforce, you could just work directly with that data. And finally, the integrations that I just mentioned. So that is the sort of enterprise architecture perspective. But let's talk really about what does Salesforce offer, what other things you can buy from Salesforce, and what do AppExchange and others offer for these 6 areas. And if you're coming from a technology perspective or evaluating options, I think of in this deck, this is one of the most important slides. It's taken us a year and a half or 2 years to just kind of research this and come up with this. So I hope it is valuable to you. Let's talk about each of these. So privacy rights automation is the space where you say right to be forgotten, portability, things like this. Out of the box, the Salesforce platform doesn't offer much in this space. What you can do is you can write your own. You could do flows, maybe write Apex. You can use communities to create a portal where you can take these requests and then process them, do things like that. Maybe you can use web to case, email to case, things like that. But you're building mostly on your own. From an add-on perspective, Salesforce offers Customer 360 that is moving in this direction. They do some things today. I'm sure they'll do a lot of things in this space tomorrow. On the App Exchange, there are a bunch of solutions. We are one of them. There are some others that have been around. And there are so many new things coming every day. So my list is just based mostly on the ones that exist, have been existing for a while. So there are some solutions that do that, including us. The next portion of this is data retention and minimization. Today, there's not that much that happens in this space. You can write your own if you like. There is complexity around it, particularly from a performance and scale perspective and, sort of load balancing, error handling perspective, but you can write your solution. Salesforce is going down this path. I haven't seen it, but I think it's on the website. They're eventually going to have something that would do an off-platform with Heroku. From an App Exchange perspective, this is a space we operate in. So we do data retention and minimization. The other thing, which is kind of very interesting and a massive, massive space in itself, is consent and communication management, preference management. This is very interesting. Salesforce actually offers you about 16 plus objects for managing communication preferences. If there is one thing on this list here, where Salesforce gives you an incredible amount of value, very enterprise grade data model, it is this space. The challenge is you get 16 objects, but there is no automation around it. There is no process. There is no streamlining of it. If you just want to do this on the platform, you're 100% on your own. You would be writing a lot of code to kind of create and match individuals, generate consents, manage the automation around it, things like that. Salesforce Customer 360 is definitely moving in that direction. It's built on the same objects. And we are the only other vendor that I'm aware of that uses these objects. There are some other App Exchange apps which are older, so they have their own set of objects. There is something more interesting here, which I think I cover later on in the slides. Then you have Sandbox data masking, which is another one of things that if you were to go build it yourself, you're writing a lot of code to do it. Salesforce offers its add-on, so you can do Salesforce data mask. And we offer a Sandbox data masking product as well. The next one is, sorry, I think my deck froze. Okay. The next one is personal data discovery. This is another space where Salesforce offers you metadata classification fields. So if you go in, if you go on fields in configuration, set up object field, you will see these data classification fields where you can say, this information is under HIPAA or GDPR. This is, we think this is sensitive information or this is not sensitive information. But really, that's kind of the extent to which it goes. If you want to, do something more here, you're writing custom code for this. Today, I'm not aware if Salesforce does anything else in this space. We definitely do work in that space. So with cloud compliance, you can click a button and basically generate your data inventory. Finally, policy and notice management. There's not a whole lot in that space. You can, again, write your own, or you can buy Salesforce CMS and community and build with that, or you can use our product. So basically, we also use communities. We use the free version of communities, and we generate these out. So that's kind of the whole sort of layout of the 6 key areas from a data privacy perspective that you can think about. And the one more that I should mention here, because it comes up in every conversation, is data encryption at rest. So data encryption at rest is not the same as data retention or right to be forgotten. What you're doing here is really, you're applying a data security idea that if somebody somehow hacks down to a Salesforce database level, then what they will get is encrypted data. They will not get like clear text data. And Shield does that. You can definitely buy that offering and use that from a security perspective. This is the one thing I wanted to highlight. This is back to that communication and consent management model that we were talking about. This is what you get. So today in your org, you have this and probably then some, right? These are what 20 plus objects, which are all about data privacy. So whether whether it's contacts, leads, users, or you may even have custom objects where you're storing personal information, Salesforce offers you this extremely granular structure to manage consent and communication preferences. And you can, like what we've done is we've built our solution on top of this. And then we also integrate with Marketing Cloud, Pardot, and things like that. And the idea is when you do omni-channel marketing, you may be sending emails through, I don't know, Pardot, you may be sending SMS through Twilio or some other technology. When you're doing omni-channel across these things, you don't want these preferences to live in your email, solution or your SMS solution. You want to integrate and centralize in Salesforce. You want a robust audit trail around it of how long do you have those consents for things like that. You want the ability that if someone calls in your call center, can adjust them. You want to offer them a preference center. So we do like all of those things. But that's something to think about, especially if you're doing a new project. Think about individual object and some of this. I have written quite a bit on this, and I'll share some links, or if you go to LinkedIn and look up my articles, these spaces we cover quite extensively there. All right. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have a pilot for Data Masker. We have a pilot for Data Masker, which is our product. And essentially, as your data moves from production to Sandbox, we mask it. We also do a number of other things by integrating with CI/CD tools, do some DevSecOps. We also do post-refresh activities. So a bunch of other things around it that we do. You can read up more on our website, and you can reach out to me or Jens, who's my colleague driving this. There's his information, jens@cloudcompliance.app. All right, some resources on our website. If you go, you could go to solutions GDPR. So literally every one of the GDPR articles and the related why do you need to do this is mentioned there. I actually have a PDF of all the recitals as well. I'll share that with the with the organizers, and they can share it with the larger group. I apologize, I should have had it here, but I don't right now. If you are dealing with the United States, if you sell into California, then this website is extremely helpful. And it talks about the CPRA rights. CPRA is the next version of the current Californian regulation. It will be enforced in 2023, but it'll have a look back to 2022. So if you sell in Americas, definitely something to think about and look at. We have a meetup group in Chicago. Well, not in Chicago anymore. That you can join, where we do publish more information and events and things like that. And with that, thank you so much. I was trying to go super fast, and I don't know how I did on timing. So I will let Andre and Tanya and Justina tell me if we are okay for some questions, or how are we doing on time?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Yeah, we do have about 5 minutes for questions.
Okay. So if anyone has a question, please do ask me. As I was showing, this is our listing. But the thing that is really interesting is if you go here on cloud compliance and GDPR, like we spend a lot of time putting these together. This is not a sales pitch. You don't have to buy anything from us. You can just go here, look up if you're doing any internal sort of business case. You can definitely learn a lot more about all of these, what regulations apply, how we've thought about these, and you can read up more on that. Questions?
Removing history records. Is that something compliant?
Yes. So we do remove history. So when you say history, so there's two kind of things we do. We remove.
Let's say we have service, on a mobile, like a field service on the mobile, in the FSL, and it tracks the technicians' whereabouts.
Mm-hmm.
And we need some technician that are going to sensitive positions that it'll be removed.
Yes. So if there are literally three things in what you said, right? One is you have a custom object, right, where you're tracking this. If you're doing that, absolutely.
Yeah, in the FSL is a standard,
Yeah. So We can totally anonymize that information. We can delete it. We can erase field values. You can do those kind of things. The other two scenarios around history is field history. So both for right to be forgotten, which is another thing that we do, or for data retention and minimization, we delete field history if you want to. And the third part of this is history as in, certain objects like case history, right? Email history. Those objects, we can delete or anonymize those. So yeah.
Yeah, I'm referring to the latitude and longitude of the positions that are stacked. When you do a field tracking.
Yes, absolutely. We can wipe those out. We can put random things, whatever you'd like. Does that answer the question? And if you'd like, just after this call, just send me a note or something, and I can absolutely
sure.
do more of that. Other questions, comments? Was this helpful?
Yes, one question. What is your pricing model?
You could just go to Get Started, and it's super transparent. Every product that we sell is, we charge by number of full users, and you could just basically pick products that you like, and you could just get a code directly here.
Okay. Very clear.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I worked for 7.5 years at Salesforce. One of the two things that I really value, that I learned there extremely well, is trust and transparency. So everything about it is super transparent. Everything is here. Like I was saying, you could go look up all of these things. We run our own product. So if you go here, everything you're saying here is coming from our product, right? So if you look at our privacy policies, they're all running from Cloud. So this is coming from our production Salesforce org. This is a page that, we have just generated. All of these things are records in a Salesforce object. So you could kind of play around with everything we have. And then if you have questions, you could absolutely, reach out to me, reach out to Jens, and get those information. Other questions? No?
I don't see anything in the chat in addition to these questions.
Okay. Let me see if something came through. Yeah, but thank you for having me, and I appreciate all the questions. And as Jens just mentioned in chat, Jens is a colleague of mine. He's based in Amsterdam. So if you are in the local Amsterdam area, and when they open up those tables for two, you can go have a drink with him. The one final thing I would say is I spent 2 years out of my 7 years at salesforce.org, which exclusively works with nonprofits and higher education institutions. So I have a lot of respect for those kind of organizations. So if you are from those organizations, or if you support them as a side thing, please let us know. We do offer discounts to them. In fact, Salesforce App Exchange just published this yesterday or 2 days ago for Norwegian Refugee Council, which is one of our customers, and they are very happy with us. So if you are in nonprofit, higher ed, or any other segment, please reach out to us. But for nonprofit and higher eds, we do offer a discount for .org customers.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that.